Okay, good evening everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habayim. We have an amazing topic tonight. This tonight's shir, Wednesday night, will be the last shir. On the next shir will be 2 weeks from now. Next week there is no shir, next Wednesday night. The Shiurim on Sefer Shemais are generously sponsored by the Zakheim family, by Dr. Zakheim Umeshpachta, Lei'lui Nishmas, Shlomo Eliezer ben R Yaakov Zakheim, Lei'lui Nishmas, Rabbi Dovid ben R Yaakov Tzvi הכהן, and Rivka bas Tuvia, Halevi, B'gan Chasam. They should be Melitze Yisham for their whole family. Ad tzedek. Tonight's shir is dedicated by my dear friends Reb Chaim and Rochie Ziman in memory of Chaim's mother, whose yahrtzeit is Tes Adar bariynã bas Aviegdor Yaakov Halevi. Reb Chaim Ziman is very dedicated every day to disseminating the Shiurim. Over the last couple of years, Baruch Hashem, he was able to, through his efforts, to disseminate the Shiurim mamish to me'os va'alafim, and even more. So we're mevarchim on this occasion his mother's neshama shem aliyah, and it should be a me'il tzir for his whole family. Ad tzedek. Tonight's shir is dedicated by my dear friend R Kenny Pinczower on the occasion of the shloshim of his mother, דינה bas Dovid chai haKohen, b'gan eden tei menuchasa, she should be melitza yishara for the whole Pinczower family. Ad tzedek. Tonight's shir is dedicated by the Ruzin Ryabinsky family in honor of their grandson, Rav Shlomo Eliezer's birthday and his continuous ascent in Limud Torah. They should be zoicha legadlei l'Torah l'chopel l'masam tovim. Okay, we have a very interesting topic tonight. This is the third part in our series. In the first part we discussed the Azulai family, its origins and its history. Part 2 we discussed the great work that the Chida composed on a boat docked at Livorno, the Shem HaGdolim. Today we're going to speak about the Chida's travels. The Chida was one of the most unique. No, before I begin, I have some very good news. First of all, Purim is coming, so you have your two options: Sefer HaKatan, Magid HaRakia, and Lashon HaKodesh. You could get this in better Sfarim stores near you. You could order it on our site, rabbidg.com. On artscroll.com, the concealed and the revealed. And late breaking news, it was just born this afternoon. You ready? The concealed and the revealed, pocket edition. The pocket edition. It's even more concealed. Right, it's Purim for Purim Katan. So this, you read on regular Purim, and this you read on Purim Katan. Also, this fits into Shalach Manas, So you slip it right into your Shalach Manas. And actually, it fits into your Afikomen bag. Also, you can, any time of the year, it's a pocket edition. Look, it fits right into the pocket. Just put it, you give it a little, And it's, what? It's a shaila with this book for sure, right? Okay, we're discussing today the travels of the Chida. The Chida made 2 historic trips from Hebron to the communities of Europe and North Africa. The Chida went on his first voyage in Shavat Tov Kuf Yud Gimel, 1753 till 1758. 5 years away from his family, collecting money for the yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael. He writes in a tshuva in Yosef Oimet, Sivan Yotes, that the importance of living in Eretz Yisrael, that living in Eretz Yisrael is equal to all the mitzvahs in the Torah. Even when Eretz Yisrael is b'chorbana. According to the Ramban, it's a mitzvah d'oraisa. So you'll ask, and besides that, in Eretz Yisrael, every tefillah goes straight up to Shamayim. Not so in the 5 towns. Not so in Borough Park. Not so in Williamsburg. Not so in Muncie. Even in Florida, the tefillahs don't go straight up, only in Eretz Yisrael. So the Chida says, so how can a person have a chelek in the great mitzvah of Yeshivas Eretz Yisrael and the great mitzvah of Torahs Eretz Yisrael? There's only one way to do it, and that is to send your money to Eretz Yisrael. It's very important to support Limud Torah in Eretz Yisrael. At a time like this, many people are looking for ways to support Eretz Yisrael. The greatest mitzvah is to support Limud Torah in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore the Chida took upon himself as a Chayv Kadosh, a holy obligation. He spent 11 years of his life collecting money for Limud Torah in Eretz Yisrael, from 1753 to 1758, and from 1773 to 1779, when ultimately he stayed in Livorno.
On the lower end of the pecking order of what you give is tzedakah in terms of
It's the highest level of tzedakah.
Really?
Supporting Limud Torah in Eretz Yisrael.
Over community fellows?
Possibly. Because you get a mitzvah yeshivas Eretz Yisrael, Limud Torah in Eretz Yisrael, and also you get more bang for your buck. Because what someone in Kailo needs in America, you could support 5 guys in Eretz Yisrael. So, okay. But yesh ladan. There is a Kabbalistic reason for the travels of the Chida, and the legend is that the Chida, together with Reb Shalom Sharabi, and together with Reb Chaim de la Rosa, they made yichudim, they fasted, and they attempted to sort of push the envelope and bring the kates. But this is considered a very dangerous endeavor, and sure enough, the heavens were not pleased that they were trying to sort of bring the Geula before it was deemed ready, and because of that, Shamayim decreed that one of them would have to go into Galus and leave Eretz Yisrael, one of them would have to pass away, one of them would be separated from the other, and the Chida accepted upon himself the fate of Galus. This is a legend that is brought, although it is not found in any of the writings of the Chida. What I would like to share with you today is 10 highlights from the travels of the Chida, recorded in the Sefer Magal Tov. The Chida wrote a diary of his travels. Again, he traveled over 11 years, and it's unclear that the Chida meant to publish this diary. He never published it himself. There is some information in it that is not necessarily complimentary about all the people that the Chida encountered. So some say the Chida never meant to publish it, but it is published. So let's say in the set, Kol Kisvei Chida, one of the volumes is Ma'agel Tov, the good circuit. And in this good circuit, in these travels of the Chida visited over 150 cities in each one of these travels. It's an amazing number. The Chida, it was able to learn many languages: French, German, Italian, Spanish, Arabic, Portuguese, and he even spoke Yiddish. So he better than a regular American yeshiva bachar. Okay, in fact, when the Chida met the Noida Behuda, and he was speaking to Noida Behuda, and his wife said something in Yiddish, and the Noida Behuda wasn't sure if the Chida got it. The Chida said a line like Kvar Purash Min Isha. It's like a line. It's like a play on words, meaning the lady already spoke. I got what the lady said in Yiddish. And not only that, recently, an expert in the Chida sent me that we have signatures of the Chida in English. So the Chida was able to write even in English. Okay, so I want to share with you 10 highlights from the travels of the Chida. Some of them are mind-boggling. Most of them are mind-boggling. Some of them, I'll explain to you why they're astounding. Let's begin in something that happened in 1754. Okay, this is from the Chida's travels to Mantua, Verona, and Padua in Italy. First of all, the Chida says he was at a levaya, and the Chida recorded everything he did every single day. On the 20th day of Shavat, 1754, he went to a levaya. Once he was there in Mantua, says the Chida, I was zoicha to go to the following 2 kfarim, the Ramah Mipano and the Ramaz, Rav Moshe Zakuta. Now, one of the big controversies not about the Chida, but a controversy regarding what the Chida's opinion was, is that the Chida lists all the Gedolim that lived before him. There is a specific Gadol that you could look in the Shem HaGedolim, and he and his name and his farm are not mentioned. Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, the Ramchal. Now, did the Chida know about the Ramchal? Did they cross paths? Maybe when the Chida came to Italy, that's when the Ramchal went to Israel. So they may have missed each other. But it's hard to say that Rabbi Yosef, that the Chida didn't know about the Ramchal. But in Magel Tov, we find that the Chida met a certain tzaddik in Padua. And the Chida writes wondrous things about this tzaddik. This tzaddik is one of the members of the secret association of the Ramchal. Says the Chida, I met there Rav Yaakov Chazak, Hashem Yishmareu. And I met him Eitzel HaKadosh Lutzato. Now, Lutzato refers to Ramchal. And the Ramchal wasn't there. It means he found him in the Ramchal's house, which may have been made like a shrine. Anyway, the Chida says wondrous things about Rabbi Yaakov Chazak. The Shamati al Rav, and this guy, I heard about this Rav, Shaloi Ra'a Keri Miyamav, that never in his life did he experience becoming impure through nocturnal emission, which is a very high madrega. We say that about Yaakov Avinu. So now, no more information is given about Rabbi Yaakov Chazak. All we know is Rabbi Yaakov Chazak was a member of the association of the Ramchal, Eitzel Lutzato, and about no one else, no other tzaddik the Chida ever met, did he say that he heard Shaloi Ra Keri Miyamav. Now, who is this Rabbi Yaakov Chazak? What's interesting is, 20 years later, in Tuf Kuf Lamed Vav, 1776, 22 years later, the Chida later, Magel Tov, says he came back to Mantua and he also spoke to Rabbi Yaakov Chazak. In one of, now I don't have this on the sheet, but in one of the Chida's private diaries, Rabbi Yaakov Chazak gave insight to the Chida about the Ramchal, because the Ramchal is reputed to have had a Magid. Magid is like an angel that comes to teach you things, to learn with you. So the Ramchal is reputed to have had a Magid. And there was question regarding the Ramchal, regarding his position on Shabtai Tzvi. There was a very big controversy. First of all, Bechlal, the whole life of the Ramchal was very controversial. The rabbis in Venice were very antagonistic to the Ramchal. The Ramchal wrote a sefer called the Second Zayar. He wrote a second Zayar HaKadosh. And he was a very young man. And he wasn't married. And he trimmed his beard. All of these things did not coincide with someone who is reputed to have been the greatest in the generation in Kabbalah. So aside from the fact he wrote Mesilas Yesharim, he also wrote plays which were acting out the coming of Mashiach. And there was a question regarding what was the Ramchal's position on Shabtai Tzvi. And in the Chida's personal diary, the Chida has a very cryptic entry, and he writes what he heard from Rabbi Yaakov Chazak, this tzaddik, that, and it's unclear what the Chida meant because not every word was spelled out, and some of it was like half sentences, that apparently what the Chida heard from Rabbi Yaakov Chazak is that there were tzaddikim who, although did not believe that Shabtai Tzvi was the Mashiach, but he had potential to be, and he brought himself out too prematurely, and therefore his potential was thwarted. But at the same time, there was something that they felt could be accessed even, and this was like a very secret conversation that the Chida had with Rabbi Yaakov Chazak. So in the Magel Tov, you just see a brief encounter the Chida has with Rabbi Yaakov Chazak, but understand that the Chida had a very deep and secret conversations with Rabbi Yaakov Chazak, specifically about the Ramchal, who the Chida never mentions in all of the Shem HaGedolim. This is the only mention here of Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato, that Rabbi Yaakov Chazak was part of the association of Lutzato. Okay? That's number one. What I also want to bring to your attention is that in Tuf Kuf Lamed Zayin, 1777, 23 years later, the Chida came back to Mantua. And guess where he went? He went to the cemetery. And which Kvarim did he go to? He went again to the Ramah Mipano and Rav Moshe Zakuta. So what do we see from here? That if you go to a kever of a big tzaddik, even if you've been there before, it's still worthwhile to go again. So the Chida, it's interesting, both times he was in Mantua, he went to the kever of Ramami Pano and Ramoshe Zakuto. And if you would like to go to the kever of Ramami Pano and Ramoshe Zakuto, you still have 72 hours to sign up to our trip that's leaving on Motzei Shabbos. You're in? Okay, so that's number one. Number two, 1754. Now, one interesting thing is the Chida avoided the communities of Altona, Hamburg, Wandsbach. Even though he's collecting money for tzedakah, for yeshivas, you would think you'd hit the big communities. He avoided those communities. He didn't want to go near the communities that were involved in the bitter machloikes between Rabbi Yaakov Tzvi and Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. So he avoided those communities. He was in Frankfurt am Main, and then he took a caravan that leaves once a week from Frankfurt am Main that goes to Worms, Varmeiza. And he went to be Makabo Pnei Harav Bal Pnei Yehoshua. And Oyam V'no, we have a description of what the Chida writes about his encounter with the Pnei Yeshua. He says, Marehu Kemare Malach Ho'eloikim. The Pnei Yeshua looked like an angel of God. And the Chida said, I told the Pnei Yeshua everything about my life and everything that happened to me. And I told him how all the Chachamim and the Rabbanim in Yerushalayim are neneh from the splendor of his Torah and from his wisdom. And I told the Pnei Yeshua that my Rebbe, my associate, Rabbi Yitzchak haKohen Rappaport, the author of Shal Yeshua's Batei Kahuna, was so honored that in the Kunshus Achron of the Pnei Yeshua quotes the Rabbi Yitzchak haKohen Rappaport. And the Chida says, when I was in Germany, I saw many people learning from Sefer Pnei Yeshua. And the Pnei Yeshua took care of the Chida, and he gave him a very honorable accommodation. And then they got into a discussion. And the Pnei Yeshua started to tell the Chida about the Machlekes, Rabbi Yaakov Emden, and Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. And do you remember the position of the Pnei Yeshua? Pnei Yeshua advocated for Rabbi Yaakov Emden against Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. Pnei Yeshua held very adamantly that he believed the accusations against Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, and the Chida records in the Magal Tov that the Pnei Yeshua told him about how all the Rabbanim in Poland and Germany, how they stood up against Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz vehemently. And you could read over here that the Rabbanon felt they were standing up for Judaism and the religion against, I don't even want to say, but you could read it in the Magal Tov.
They say that he is a continuation of
And the Pnei Yeshua said he has letters from the rabbis of Constantinople who defended Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, and the Pnei Yeshua said, I don't agree with them. They don't understand the issues at hand. They don't understand the problem. And the Chida, like he didn't know what to do. Here he's in the Pnei Yeshua's house. He says, woe to Ir. He says that my world became dark for me. Look, 6 lines from the bottom, 5 lines from the bottom. Olam choshech ba'adi. My world turned dark. Al chilul haTorah, of the desecration of the Torah of Chil Hashem, that the Goyim heard, and they published in the newspapers, that the rabbis of Klal Yisrael dispute another great rabbi and accuse him of believing in the coming of Mashiach already. Woe to ears that heard this. This is, the Chida writes, this is a conversation that he had with the Pnei Yehoshua, which is an astounding thing. Now what's interesting is, in the Shem HaGdolim, the Chida does quote Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz.
So why doesn't he say it?
As one of the Gedolim.
He's not allowed to, halacha was not allowed to say, like, to Pnei Yeshua, because he expresses clearly dissent.
It's not clear from this writing where the Chida stands on the Machlekes Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yonasan. When he says it's a Chil Hashem, he doesn't say, is it a Chil Hashem that this situation arose, that there was somebody who had to be accused of this, or is a Chil Hashem that they accused him falsely, or is a Chil Hashem is that it's true? He doesn't say. Doesn't quite say. It is not clear from the writing of the Chida where he stood on this issue.
Well, if he put in Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz and he left out Moshe Chaim Lazudo, then...
So he put in Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, he also put in Rabbi Yaakov Emden.
Sorry, what was the machlokes?
Machlokes is basically that there were certain amulets that were found that made references possibly to that individual. Okay, so now that's another highlight. The Chida meets with the Pnei Yeshua, and the Pnei Yeshua sort of laid it on what he held about the machlokes. Next, this one, if anyone's been coming to the Shiurim over the years, you've heard this on Tisha B'Av. First of all, Chida was in Worms, 1754. And he says, Worms, I hear, is a very early community. In the times of the Bayis Sheni already, they had a Sanhedrin in Worms. There was a Nara Hamurasa who committed adultery, and they killed her. They killed her in Worms. And the Roikeach, what's the Roikeach's name? Rabbi Eliezer mi Garmaiza. And there's a Beis Knesset there with a room, and we have a Kabbalah that's the Beis Medrash of Rashi. Now, I want to tell you, I have a tradition. Rashi was born in France, and he ran away because of crusades to Worms. I have a tradition that I come from Rashi. I do. Now, 80% of Ashkenazim also come from Rashi. 4 out of every 5 Ashkenazim come from Rashi. Because in the 10th century, in the 11th century, there were 10,000 Ashkenazim, and Rashi had 5 daughters, so statistically almost every Ashkenaz. But I happen to have a tradition that I come from Rashi. Now what happened, I'll tell you, Maisa Shahaya. I was in Rashi's room, and going to give a shir. I gave a shir in Rashi's room. I put down my hat. We left, and the door closed. And there was no one in the whole country. And there was no one, could you hear me now? There was no one in the whole country who had the key. So my hat is now in the Zayda's room, was never able to get it back. Okay, that's my...
Your sound is very low.
My sound is low?
Now it's better.
Okay, not some soidos, I can't reveal publicly. Okay, so what? Hat insurance? Nah, when it's in the family, there's no way to collect, So, took my hat off from what? Okay, so originally, the great, what?
What day of the week was it?
It was Chav Tes Tammuz. It was Rashi's, no.
What day of the week was it?
I don't remember.
I'm saying, was it close to Shabbos?
Yeah,
Because what did you do on Shabbos?
what did I do on Shabbos? On Shabbos we were in Mezhbish. I'll tell you, we were in Mezhbish. Yeah, but in Mezhbish I had to buy a fur hat. I bought a fur hat. Yeah. Not a Strama, but a Russian fur hat. Yeah. And actually, my kids took it out for the snowstorm to wear. But okay. Anyway, whatever happens in Mezhbish stays in Mezhbish. So, the Chida says originally the name of the region, the Roikeach was known as Rabbi Eliezer of Garmaiza. So where did Worms get its name? So the story goes like this. Well, you know the story? That there was a dragon in Garmaiza, a man-eating worm. Every day he would eat one person. And they had a lottery. Who would be, one day it was Ruvain, one day Shimon. And if you didn't feed him a person, the dragon was, he was a monster. And one day it fell out on Yankel, and Yankel went in with his sword, and a miracle happened. He was able to vanquish the dragon from within. And because this dragon was called Verem, they renamed the area from Garmaiza to Vermaiza. Now, I published this story in one of the books, I think, The Darkness and the Dawn. And one of the editors said, "Where'd you get this story from? This sounds like an old German fable." It said, "Chas v'shalom." It's in Magal Tov. They didn't believe me. I pulled out my Magal Tov. I showed them. They didn't know what to say. And it's now in an art scroll book. Could you imagine? Because it was in the Magal Tov. So that's, now, the Chida says when he was in Worms, he was told the Maharam Rothenburg is buried there. Moreover, he was going down the street, and on a particular street, there's an indentation, and legend has it, Rashi's mother was walking by, and a horse is coming, and Rashi's mother had nowhere to go, and miraculously the wall, indented, and says the Chida, he thinks this story is found in Shalshalas HaKabbalah. Fine, that is highlight number 3. Highlight number 4. Highlight number 4 is the Chida's trip to London. When the Chida was in London, they took him to visit a place in Londres called Turi, the Tower of London. The Tower of London is an amazing place. Says the Chida, in the Tower of London I saw a lion, I saw a 100-year-old eagle, I saw an Indian cat, big like a dog, was a crossbreed from like a tiger. I saw there a room full of ammunition with guns laid out in a very orderly, beautiful way. There I saw the busts of all the kings of England riding on horses. It looks so lifelike. If you didn't know any better, you would think they were alive. I saw armor. I saw weapons. I saw shields. I saw helmets. And then says the Chida, in an inner chamber, I was taken, Heru lanu keser malchus avnei nezer misnaitzezes maleim ziv umafikim naga. I saw the crown of the king, splendorous, luminous, shining. It was magnificent, with a goblet out of gold that they used to anoint the king, and many other kelim, and segulas malachim, and other treasures. Says the Chida, I saw all of these things. Meitzitz min acharakim. Doyeg, I was worried. Look at the power of the Gentiles, and look at what a low position we're in. However, v'sameach, but I rejoiced. This is one of my favorite lines in all the writings of the Chida. Why? Says the Chida, I rejoiced, because im la'ovrei ritzoynoi kach, if this is the glory of the sinners, of those who violate the will of Hashem, la'oisei ritzoynoi alachas kama v'kama, how much grandeur is in store for Klal Yisrael who does the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Days are coming when we will be zoichet to see Mashiach Apenu Ruach Apenu Mashiach Hashem Meir Umazir, that all the glory or all the grandeur of the kings of England is a mashal to the great grandeur that's in store for the Jewish people. So here the Chida is in the Tower of London, and he is inspired, anticipating how great Klal Yisrael will be when Mashiach comes. That's a very beautiful perspective. Number 5, the Chida comes to Tunis. You know where Tunis is? North Africa. Tunis was Ir Ve'em B'Yisrael, was one of the major Jewish communities. Now, recently, there was all kinds of chabalim over there. And they desecrated. We have a tradition that many Go'onim are buried in Tunis. Go'onim. I'm saying, when I say Go'onim, I mean from the era of the Go'onim. And the Chida says that the Gadol Hadar was Rabbi Avram Tayyib. And before him, in Tunis, they just learned Gemara and Rashi. And comes Rabbi Avram Tayyib and other great Chachamim, and they wondrously were Marbitz Torah, Be'iyun, Toisvis, the Marshal, the Marsha. They loved the Marshal. They loved learning Be'iyun so much. The story goes, one Erev Yom Kippur, they were so involved in a Marshal that they didn't realize it was already time for the Sudas HaMafsekes, and they hadn't bought a morsel of food before the fast. That's how involved they were in learning. A story goes, says the Chida, that from the Rabbanim in Tunis, Rav Tzemach Tzarfasi was a choyle for many months until Eliyahu Hanavi himself came and cured him. And they raised a new generation of great Chachamim. Says the Chida, there are more than 300 Gedolim Niflaim in Tunis. Could you imagine? However, I saw 14-year-old boys in Tunis. They could hold their own with the best of them. But all they do is they learn Shas and the Marsha, like the Rabbanei Ashkenaz, and they only know the Rambam a little bit. They're not Bekiyim in Poiskim and in Shal Sechuvas. And I had to reprimand them that me, says the Chida, they think I have a great memory, even though I don't have a great memory. And even the Gevirim in Tunis, Their only desire, they're very machshav Torah. Chol cheshkam lezakois lebanim tamid chachamim. All they want is to be zoicha to children of tamid chachamim, and they give a lot of money to tzedakah. By the way, a few pages later, Chida also says that he had to reprimand them that they don't learn the Beis Yosef and the Poskim, they just learn Shas and the Marsha. Yeah.
Tunis actually it's the capital.
Is what?
Capital
Of Tunisia.
Okay.
What country is it?
Did all of these places that he visited,
Algeria?
did they know of him?
No, a lot of the places he had to go with like a tzetel, like people come collecting in a shul. Now it was a little bit more respectable. It was a very official document signed by many of the chachamim but it's not like they scanned him or anything. It's not like he had
His reputation had not.
It's a yes and no. I'm the Chida. Okay, prove it. So actually, he says something very beautiful here. Throughout all of his journeys, whenever they would honor him, he would always say he feels very good because it's not him who's being honored, Eretz Yisrael is being honored. He felt he was a representative, an ambassador of Eretz Yisrael. And when he was insulted and disparaged, he felt that Eretz Yisrael was being hurt. So he writes that in Tunis, that when he was there, he was able to show his prowess in learning. He says, even though I recognize my own fault and my lowliness in Ion and in every chachma, I'm bara anoichi be'emes, I'm really empty of wisdom, but I would beseech Hashem, who's merachim on everyone, that Hashem should give me kavod and chachma and roichav lev as a reflection of the kavod of Eretz Yisrael. So that's also, like the whole attitude of the Chida was that he was an ambassador of Eretz Yisrael. Whatever honor they show him, he was representing Artseinu HaKadoshah. Okay, next. Magal Tov, Zayin Elul, Taf Kuf Lamed Hey, 1775. Chida is back in Italy. And he talks about different gardens he saw. And one of the gardens, on the fourth line, number 8, Yeshlo Labyrinto. It has labyrinths. Milashon in Brululio. V'hu Gan HaMevucha. A garden maze. Say a garden maze. Which famous sefer talks about a garden maze? Mesilat Yesharim. Mesilat Yesharim says that the pasuk says, Al kein yoimru hamoishlim bayu cheshbon. Those who rule over the Yetzer Hara, they say the only way to overcome the Yetzer Hara is to make cheshbon hanefesh. The Chida says, isn't it interesting that the only ones who know how to overcome the Yetzer Hara, the only ones who could advise us how to overcome the Yetzer Hara are those who have already ruled over the Yetzer Hara. Says the Chida, you know what it's like? It's like a garden maze. When you're in the garden maze, you don't know it one way from the other way. You don't know the right way from the wrong way. Someone who's still fighting the Yetzer Hara, if you were to ask him, how do you overcome the Yetzer Hara? He would have no idea, and even if he would have an idea, it's the wrong idea. Because he still hasn't overcome the Yetzer Hara, so he's still in the garden maze. But says the Chida, it's only the guy standing on top of the portico, on top of the maze. He could tell you, go here, make a right, make a left, because he sees from an aerial view what the right way is, what the wrong way is. So too, says the Chida, only those who rule over the Yetzer Hara could tell you how to overcome the Yetzer Hara. And what do the Moishlim say? Bayu cheshbon. There's only one way to overcome the Yetzer Hara. Make a cheshbon hanefesh. So the question is, I learn every day. Will that be enough to overcome the Yetzer Hara? No chance, pal. Not a chance. I daven with the minyan 3 times a day. I come early. I don't dare to bring my cell phone in the shul. Otherwise, you're just asking. The Yetzer Hara's on your team. You're working for the Yetzer Hara. You're employed by the Yetzer Hara. If you bring the phone into the shul, you are the ambassador of the Yetzer Hara. Not only that, you're his right-hand man. You're working for him. So I don't even bring the phone into shul. And I learn be'iyun 3 times a day, 5 times a day, and I go to the mikvah, do I have a chance, the Yetzer Hara? Pal, you're dead meat. You have no chance against the Yetzer Hara. Because the Moishlim B'Yitzram, they say the only way to overcome the Yetzer Hara is you have to make Cheshbon HaNefesh. So the famous garden maze that the Mesilas Yesharim refers to, says the Chida, I was in the garden maze, Shekosav B'Mesilas Yesharim. So that means he knew exactly what the Mesilas Yesharim was. So even though it's not on his list of books, which is amazing, it's not in Shem HaGdolim.
How old was the Rambam?
36,
A
38.
week before his 40th birthday.
Yeah.
What type of time frame are we talking about? Could have said, it was 20 years later than that.
No, because
It's
it's
11.
I think the Ramchal passed away before the Chida. Yeah.
So you probably found out about him later in his life.
He knew from Rabbi Yaakov Chazak.
Sound.
He knew from Rabbi Yaakov Chazak about the Ramchal. Next, we gotta finish. Okay, France, 1777. The Chida, together with some very prominent French guys named Marcus di Tomi and another god Abate Italiano, sounds like an Italian, and they take the Chida to Palace of Versailles. And the Chida is describing on their way to the Palace of Versailles a very famous woman received them and served them to drink chocolate, hot chocolate. Okay? So the Chida had a hot chocolate. Actually, I don't know if it was hot, it could have been cold. A chocolate drink. Okay?
Like
And
G-Cola.
chocolate milk.
Okay.
G-Cola.
And the Chida describes some of the chambers of Versailles Palace. There was an elegant chamber with pillars covered with gold on both sides, lamps. There was a gallery on the ceiling. Anyone who's ever in Versailles, you look at the ceiling, it's painted. They had guys up there lying horizontally for 2 decades. The guy was lying, and people would just fall to the ground, and the next guy would go up and continue painting. Anyway, and they saw officers and they saw ministers, and then the Chida said, I saw the brother of King Louis. I saw King Louis's brother. And then he stood next to me for 5 minutes. And then King Louis himself came out, and I made a bracha on him. And he was wearing a red garment with armor. And right after the king passed, one of the king's henchmen came over to my comrade, the Chida writes, and he asked, who's the ambassador next to you? Who is this regal individual? What country is he the ambassador of? King Louis looked at the Chida. He had never seen such royalty. King Louis asked the Chida's attendant, what country is this man the ambassador of? He says he's not an ambassador. He's here from Egypt. He came just out of curiosity. And they presented the Chida finana, a mug. Wherever you go, you need to get a souvenir. So the Chida maybe got a King Louis mug. Now, I want to tell you something amazing. A year later, Chida is still in France, and the Chida is talking about how they showed him great respect and great honor, and he met a guy, Rab Dovid Nakit, and Rab Avram Vidal, and they said, you're such a great man, Mr. Rabbi Chida, because we asked you to pray for the queen, and you should know she's already 4 months pregnant. Look how your tefillos were effective. So I looked this up right before the shir. I looked, who was the Queen of France in 1778? Sure enough, King Louis's wife, Marie Antoinette. She couldn't have a kid for 8 years. She couldn't have a kid for 8 years. until now we see the secret. The Chida davened for her, and she was able to have many children.
Still, the cattle and everything.
Okay, there you go. Next. Number 8. The Chida was in Amsterdam in the year 1778. And says the Chida, in Amsterdam, they were all depressed. They were very depressed in Amsterdam because they were in financial shambles. Kulam b'tzar. You know why? Ki kol masa'am be'aksiunis. All their money was in shares, and all of their capital was in the London stock market. And the London stock market crashed in 1778. Why? Mibnei milchemes ha'amarakenem shamardu, because of the American Revolution. So because of the American Revolution, the stock market crashed in London, and in Amsterdam they were depressed because they had invested in the London stock market. So you can imagine that unbelievable? The Chida's writing about how people were walking around depressed in Amsterdam because they invested in the London stock market, which crashed because of the American Revolution. You know? And says the Chida, Hein gvuraisav v'noiraisav, because the next day, me Hashem yotza adavar, and I got a padrino. A patron. Patron means he covers you, and he covers your books.
Wow.
By the way, if anybody wants to be a patron of upcoming books, and you were worried, you know, the stocks are not good, and is that a yes? Yeah? You're the stock market. No, the Chida says it's the best time. The best time, you have financial difficulty, says the Chida, a miracle happened. Hashem sent him a patron, Beli Taireach Klal.
How would he send the money back to Israel? He was there for years.
How did he send the money back? Good question. There was a way. I don't.
He's not going to carry all this money year after year with him while he's traveling.
What was the method of transporting? Good question. They may have had like documentation, like something akin to a check. Let me see if I could get you. I think I may have seen something on this. Okay, next, number 9. Okay, it's now Purim in Amsterdam. Okay, it's the 16th day of Adar. The Chida is invited to the house of the Rav. Who's the Rav in Amsterdam? Rav Shaul Amsterdam. Okay, Rav Shaul Amsterdam. And the Chida says, I'm invited to his house, and at his table, there was a wondrous table with a model 2 amos tall and it was a model of the castle of Achashverosh, and there was a palace, and Esther was laying on the mita, and Achashverosh was there, and Haman noifel, and then on the outside Haman was hanging, and then you have soldiers and many beautiful pictures, and the whole model was made out of sugar. It must have cost 20 sikini, which was a work of great artisanship, and the rich people of the city sent it to the Chida. And the whole table was full of megadim and peiros and gvina, and it said on everything kosher lePesach, and they had vinegared cucumbers, everything made out of sugar. Okay, and then the lamdanim came in, and the Rav would say Divrei Torah, and I also said Divrei Torah, and they had orchestral musicians, lyres and harps, and then people came in and they started saying Purim Torah. They said people came, and the Chida quotes the Purim Torah. Now, you want to hear goinistic of Purim Torah from 200 years ago? You never heard such great Purim Torah. Today, if Rav would get up and say this in a shul, you'd think, wow, what great Torah. Back in the day, this was the Purim Torah. Okay? They asked the question, it says, so we know the story, a father asked the kid, climb up the ladder and bring the Shiluch HaKain, and the kid fell down. But what happened to the promise? Laman Yarichon. Laman yarichun yamecha. So the guy said on Purim, it says Laman yarichun yamecha al ha'adama. You have to be on the ground. As soon as you're not on the ground anymore, all bets are off. So that was the first chiddush. The next chiddush, the Gemara in Chulin asks, how do you know you follow Rav? What do you mean, how do we know follow Rav? It says they hung the 10 sons of Haman. How do we know that they were his sons? It must be we follow Rav. Why can't we prove Rav from the fact that it says they hung the 10 sons of Haman? What, you did a DNA test on these kids? How could you hang them knowing for sure they're the sons of Haman? The answer is, it says Yasu Eitz Gavaya Chamishim Ama. And it says the Teva of Noach was 50 amos. Just like the Teva of Noach only brought in the righteous animals, so too the gallows of Haman only hung the Rishayim. Okay? Next. Now, the next one, I don't know, I'm getting a little, to me, I don't know if this is Purim Torah, this is Geshmaka Torah. Chazal say, Al ha'etz asher heichen lai, on the tree, Haman was hanged. Haman was hanged. A picture is hung. We review this every year. A chefza is hung, and a person is hanged. The shaila is, what about Haman's sons? Because since they were dead already, are they like a chefza, and therefore they're hung like a picture? Or are they like a gavra, and they're hanged? Okay? Tzarachian. But the shaila is like this. Chazal say, Al ha'etz asher heichen lai, Haman was hanged on the tree he prepared for himself. Because ultimately, this tree, he thought he was preparing it for Mordechai, but he was really preparing it for himself. Yeah, but if you had asked Haman, at the time you're preparing it, it can't be you're preparing it for himself. So the Lamdan said like this. The Gemara in Be'ah says that for Shabbos, since Shabbos is chashuv, you need hachana. But a weekday Suda, the loy chashiva, loy boy hachana. Now, if Haman was making the gallows for Mordechai, Haman didn't think Mordechai was chashuv. In fact, vayivez be'enav. Mordechai was disgraceful in Haman's eyes. So how could he say, al ha'etz asher heichen? He couldn't have been preparing for Mordechai because he didn't think Mordechai was chashuv. But he thought he was chashuv. Therefore, Chazal know he was preparing it for himself because Mordechai was not chashuv. He thought he was chashuv. Says the Chida, and obviously the Chida thought it was pretty clever, otherwise he wouldn't have recorded it for posterity. Okay, very interesting.
The date, it says it was on Tes.
It was the 16th of Adar, Tezayin. Yeah, they're way past the Purim. But watch this, in Amsterdam, the 23rd of Adar, the Chida says, Matzah Shabbos Kodesh. I went out to the streets of Amsterdam, and they were reveling with the masks and shtuyos. Why? Because Purim of a week ago. Says the Chida, they acted as if the city belonged to them. And you know who did it? Not us Sfardim. It was all Ashkenazim. Amsterdam has more than 3,000 Ashkenazim. These Ashkenazim think they own the city. Just because they don't have to be in a ghetto like in other European communities, he says, Davar Pelehu, that Heim loikchim yoiser medai, they're taking too much for themselves. Ve'ki'ilu heim hamoishim, as if they rule the city. What? Next, 1778. This is one of my favorite things in all the writing of the Chida. I met Rav Dovid Moldula. He told me when the Pri Chadash came to Amsterdam, the old rabbi, Rabbi Yitzchak Abuav, was very old, and the community of Amsterdam offered the Pri Chadash to be the Rav of the city. By the way, they also offered the Chida to be the Rav of the city, and the Chida turned them down. The Pri Chadash was the Rebbe of the Chida's either father or grandfather. And they offered the Pri Chadash, they said, you'll be the rabbi, and as soon as the old rabbi dies, you'll take his title also. He said, listen, I don't take gifts, the Pri Chadash says. Don't give me presents, Purim, Pesach, Chanukah. I don't take gifts. So therefore, you're going to be paying a big salary. Don't say we'll give you a small salary and we'll shtup you. No, I'm not being shtupped. There's no bribes over here. You pay me a big salary. So they said, okay, we'll double the last salary. The Pri Chadash says, no, that's not good enough. I want 1,000 tukatni. Tukatni, that's a real salary. They thought about it, and they said, we'll give you 1,000 tukatnim. Whatever you want. He said, let me think about it. And the other thing he says, that the deal is, anything which is halachic, I have the final call. They said fine. A few days later, Pri Chadash came back. They said, I can't take the job. They said, why can't you take the job? He says, because next week I'm going to go to this guy on the board, and I'm going to say, you have 2 Gentile women in your house, and you're not doing good stuff. Remove them from your house. I'm going to go to another guy, I'm going to say, you're not really keeping Shabbos. I'm going to go to another guy, and I'm going to say, I don't like the way you're acting in the Beis HaKnesses, and you're going to gather up against me, and you're going to force me out of town. And then what's going to be with me? So I appreciate the offer. Thanks, but no thanks. I cannot take your job. And the board turned to the Pri Chadash, and they said, you're right. You cannot be our Rav, because we just want a figurehead. But ultimately, we don't want someone to tell us what to do. Says the Chida, u'be'emes hani'ani ma'oid lachsoich b'noyam divrei harab Pri Chadash. I have a lot of pleasure from what the Pri Chadash told them. Va'ashrav, Pri Chadash is very fortunate. Ki loifana l'kavod hamaduma. He did not take the prestigious job which would have given him empty kavod. Ve'eno iroya b'shel acherim she'enam parshim mehaveros. If he would have to see the sins and not be able to say anything. Ve'zacha l'heichicham techachas megula al pneim, and not be able to give them open rebuke. Says the Chida about the Pri Chadash, Zechusai Yagain Aleinu, may his merit protect all of us. So Pri Chadash ended up going to Yerushalayim, and he's buried at the foot of Har HaZeisim. But the Chida says, fortunate is the Pri Chadash that he didn't take this job where his hands would be tied. Who? He lived there, but he didn't take the job of the Rav of the community. Anyway, these are 10 pretty interesting highlights of the travels of the Chida. Zechusai Yagain Alein V'Kol Yisrael Amen. Shkayach everyone. Next week, no shir, but you could follow some of our exciting adventures, and Bez Hashem, see everybody back in 2 weeks. Call to everyone.
See you tomorrow.
Amen, amen. Thank you.
Are you having Shir Friday?
Yes. Bli neder. Yes.